The Cowboys are set to take on the BYU Cougs, and evidently the Big 12 title is going to go through Provo, Utah. We have some midseason MVPs, of course, and Mike Gundy not making moves, maybe making moves, maybe not publicly. Is it good? Is it bad? Do we expect a whole lot in Provo? Well, we have a guest, so you don't have to hear my ugly mug the whole time.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Game Time. Make sure that you get the best in the game with Game Time tickets. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We are going to shift right into the conversation of the Cowboys off of the bye week. It was equal parts frustrating and nice to not have to worry about the Cowboys playing yesterday, but at the same time, I have questions, and I don't know that we have a whole lot of answers. Of course, we have some things going on in the background, but is that going to be enough? I don't know, but maybe my buddy Reagan might have an idea. Brother, man, how are we feeling today, sir?
I am feeling electrified. Oklahoma State's coming off their 42-3 loss against the bye. We're 3-4 now. No, I'm kidding. I'm doing good.
How dare you be pessimistic to start this thing off? All right, so we'll jump right into it. Obviously, Mike Gundy is making some moves that are set to be beneficial to Brian Nardo, but outside of that, there's been a lot of, secrecy. Are we doing this? Are we not doing that? And obviously, I was the one to put my big old fat foot in my mouth over the Charlie Dickey thing. But nonetheless, the things about Alan Bowman helping out, I think that's going to be good for Mike Gundy and some of the moves that we're kind of hoping are going to happen. But that's kind of the point. Dunn is still here. Dickey's still here. Rattay is still here. McIndoe's still here. Mike Gundy doesn't do midseason firings very often. I think he's done it once in the last 20 years. So maybe, we should have expected the status quo to remain the same. But, Reagan, are we in status quo moment, or do you anticipate Mike Gundy doing something in this bye week that is going to show us a new version of the Cowboys, much like we did get after Iowa State last season, or is this wishful thinking, my guy?
Depends. I think there's changes that will happen, but I don't think it's going to be the changes that we need to actually take place in order for there to be genuine and substantial change in the future. Week to week, sure, maybe to the end of this season, we could see some change there. But in terms of this program advancing to the next step that we all know is capable of it becoming, I don't think we're going to see anything, at least this week.
Dang. So actually, this is kind of the fun question for, I guess, you and everybody else. With Garrett Rangel, absolutely shocks the world and wins in Provo, Utah. Is it a good thing if Garrett catches wildfire? Because you'd mentioned off air that the schedule after BYU, right, as you look at it as it pertains to the Big 12 standings at the moment, the schedule after BYU does get much more manageable for the Cowboys. So if Garrett Rangel does have the game of his life in Provo, Utah, there's a very good possibility that we could win a lot of these games rolling on. The only problem there is, and tell me I'm crazy if I am, if Garrett Rangel goes 4-1, 5-0, something crazy at the end of the season, does that mean we have to stick with what we have now, which is evidently more Dickey, more Dunn, more McIndoe, more Rattay? If Garrett Rangel shocks the world and goes 4-1 or whatever, does that not give Casey Dunn a little bit to say, see, right? If you'd have gave me Garrett the whole time, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if that's good. I mean, I want Garrett to succeed. I want the Cowboys to win out, but not if it means the same status quo and we get the same coordinators to do the same thing next season. Tell me I'm crazy, Reagan. Tell me I am.
Well, I don't know what nuggets you've given the folks that listen to this wonderful podcast. But if Rangel does indeed go off and beat BYU and Provo, which I think there's a better chance than people realize, and somehow, God forbid, Oklahoma State wins out, wins the next 5, which means we'd finish. What did that make us? Would that make us 9-3? I think, yeah, 9-3. And probably like 3rd place in the Big 12. So that would mean that Dunn would absolutely have an argument to stay for another year for a lot of internal reasons. And I'm just going to be honest, that's worst case scenario. I love Garrett Rangel and I want him to succeed on like a personal level.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at it from a fundamental change perspective for Oklahoma State moving forward, I can tell you guys, us winning out is not a perceived good thing like you would expect it to be. I know that's crazy. I know that's to say. It's almost dumb to say, oh, I hope we lose, which I don't.
No, right.
But I do, because here's why. Here's why. There's a standard at Oklahoma State that is not good. And the standard is make a bowl game, and we're okay. Exceed expectations, even if the expectations change in the middle of the season, then we're good. Because how Mike Gundy thinks about it, he doesn't care about the media. He doesn't care about preseason hype. That's not. Everyone says, oh, well, he flails when expectations exist. He doesn't even. He doesn't watch the media. He doesn't care. It's not about that. It's his own personal expectations of a team that matter. And coming into this year, he had high expectations, I believe, of this football team. A lot of things went wrong. So here's what he's thinking now in his head. Okay, well, if we can't fix them, then the expectations have now changed from, oh, we should win the Big 12 this year to, well, hey, if we can win 3 out of our last 6 games, it's actually really successful with what's happened. Promise you that's what's in his head. Because he's thinking in his mind, oh, we play top 25 BYU. You know, they have a really good coach, really good run game. We can't stop the run. Oh, then we play Colorado. They have a really good. I promise you, I assure you, if he gets out coached, then it's not a problem. So if you want the change to happen, the core issue has to be exposed, which we all know what the core issue is. And that's 1, the offensive line, and 2, the offensive play calling. And those 2 things are down to Dickey and Dunn. And if you want those 2 things changed, then unfortunately they have to be exposed to such an egregious level that Mike Gundy has no choice, to where even the donors are putting pressure on his back, which is the true core to the issue. But we won't get into that rabbit trail.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far into the crazy people style of land, even though I live there. Like, I live in a crazy land. But nonetheless, dude, I made a joke the other day on my show, kind of like, you know, Mike Gundy or Casey Dunn might have a picture of Mike Gundy in Viva La Mexico at a donkey show. Like, is it not getting to the point that it just doesn't make sense, right? Because the relationship can sometimes be contentious post-Utah, post-Kansas State. Obviously, you know, there was some disagreements on what direction they should be going, but dude, like, make it make sense. I can't make it make sense. And you don't want to trip and go into, like, you know, again, crazy people style land, but it just, from a football perspective, it doesn't make sense. From a film perspective, statistical perspective, and everybody leans to their buddies. And maybe I have a hard time believing that Mike Gundy cannot see what the deficiency is here, and that Mike Gundy cannot see that, hey, I've been doing this with Casey Dunn now for years. This has now become a trend, right? Remember how Mike Gundy used to say every 3 or 4 years we're going to be good enough to win a Big 12 title, and then the years in between we're going to be pretty good, right? Fair. Well, now it's become every other year we have to completely rebuild the locker room, and it just – how does Mike Gundy stick with this same setup and scenario when he clearly is smart enough and good enough to football to know that, pardon my French, but this shit ain't working, dude? How do you compartmentalize how Mike Gundy views this stuff? There's
a couple problems, Cody. I think you can look at it from 2 perspectives. One, the whole thing of Oklahoma State will be good enough to win the Big 12 every 4 years argument is trash now. We don't have OU or Texas in this conference. We don't have that competition that we used to. Oklahoma State should, and even the years that Gundy was considering the 3 years, our typical expectation was, okay, finish 3rd to 5th. Right. Guess what? 3rd to 5th is a Big 12 championship spot now. That's what it should be, because OU isn't in the way. There's no excuse. Oklahoma State should be right there, even if it's 10-2, just missing out. No excuses. We are in no one, no one faces the facts. We are in a borderline group of 5 conference in terms of the talent level, in terms of power, in terms of the recruiting. Okay. I'm not talking about actual ability because I think BYU is a super competitive team, same with Iowa State.
Right.
But if you look anywhere past the top 8 teams, those teams would struggle to win the American some years. Okay. It's just the truth. So, and I know that's a bold take, but Oklahoma State
Yeah, a little much.
we were talking about them being a Big Ten team. They had conversations with the Big Ten. They had conversations with the SEC. They had conversations with the Pac-12 pre-dismantlement. Okay.
Right.
This is a team that understood we are the best left, and they are from an athletic standpoint as a holistic athletic department. NIL, it's so stupid. What I got to get on a rant, but NIL, Oklahoma State's right there. Okay. They can be. That's what I should say.
Yeah, we're capable.
They can be.
Right.
Their donors are right there. The money's right there. Oklahoma State's not a poverty program. Just keep all those things in mind. And then we also have the expectations of we have all these facilities and all everything that that program needs to take that next step into a playoff contender. Oklahoma State has the ingredients. Okay. And then you have an experienced head coach that, and the thing with Mike Gundy, it's always been, can he get the right people around him? And if he can, my goodness, is he a phenomenal head coach because he's so good at recruiting gems. He's so good at finding the outliers, and he's a perfect coach for like a small program that has high capacity, and that's Oklahoma State. So to answer the question then, which is why is done not gone, and how is that differentiate from where we were before?
Right.
And I think it's because, again, of the expectations changing in the athletic department. When Holder was taken away and we brought in Chad Weidberg, I think there was a misunderstanding that Holder hated Gundy. And so Weidberg wanted to repair that relationship. And so he gave him that contract that's now wrecked this university, specifically the football program, because there's no way to get rid of him. He has a stronghold on all kinds of things. So there's no pressure on Gundy anymore when it comes to keeping his guys or the people that he likes around him. And Casey Dunn's been with him basically since the beginning. So he's a close friend. It's not like a normal work relationship. He wants Casey Dunn to succeed because he's a friend. He knows his family. They're all friends. He goes out to get a drink with him, I'm sure, things like that. And so it's a different level of relationship where Gundy understands he's not going anywhere. So he can secure Casey Dunn's job because he's his friend. And think about pulling your best friend into an office and telling him you're fired because you're not good enough. And I just don't really see, because they think alike. They're very similar minds in a lot of ways. They bicker on ways to approach certain things, but I just don't think that's enough for Mike Gundy to want to get rid of a guy. Because from his perspective, he's thinking, we've had 3 defensive coordinators in the last 5 years, and we've had all these people in the portal and NIL, and he isn't thinking Casey Dunn can't call plays, which is the core root to the issue. And then also people don't want to play for him. They just don't. They don't like the guy. So those are the 2 things right there, Cody, that I think the problem is. One, I don't necessarily think he has something on Gundy, and if he does, it wouldn't shock me.
Right.
But I think the core issue is, one, you're talking about expectations. I think that's a part of the problem. 2 is the pressure on Gundy to actually facilitate change anymore. And 3 is a stronghold both from donors. And 4 is the perceived issue from Mike Gundy, which is incorrect.
Well, I mean, eventually it's got to reach ahead before we switch gears here. Yeah, you mentioned NIL, right? And also how Gundy does have a lot of comfort because he has earned that right to kind of have his I don't know, status is where he currently resides as the king of Stillwater. But at the same time, you mentioned NIL. Dude, we had donors come out of basically nowhere, right? And some of the regular people to come together collectively to put the money for Ollie Gordon and all of the offensive linemen and Alan Bowman and Brennan Presley and DeJon Stribling. Like we were able to do all this. If you're one of those donors that put together millions and millions of dollars, there's no way you can be happy. Like there's absolutely. So if there is any pressure on Gundy, it's got to be from the donors, because in this NIL era, if you give all this money and Ollie goes and wins the Heisman, then it was so worth it that you get more donors that want to give more money for the next dude. But when you give all that money and you have this happen, and then you have your head coach in the middle of the season say, we're not going to do anything, we're not going to change anything. Dude, as a donor, I would want to destroy things if I just gave $200,000 and then
Cody, I want to build off what you're saying really quick, because before I forget, you mentioned how they came together for Ollie Gordon.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really perfect example when I was saying NIL can be, The reason they're not is because of the approach. And the reality is Oklahoma State is paying out more NIL this year than the University of Oklahoma. Understand that. We brought back all these seniors. This is the equivalent, Oklahoma State's current roster, of if OSU was going out and recruiting at a top 20 level. That's what this roster is in terms of the NIL payout. Understand that it's there. The reason we're not going further is because, one, I want to say this because we talk about what the root core of the issue is. Casey Dunn can't recruit a cucumber. He's awful. He's so bad. He will go out and the 4-star that we're about to get, tick him off because I don't know. If you don't commit tomorrow, I'm actually going to talk to this 3-star in Choctaw. That's what he does. I'm telling you. So I'm just telling you the truth, guys, that the reason we don't get 5 stars or 4 stars is the approach. If you think Texas Tech has more recruiting capability, and Baylor has more recruiting capability, and TCU has more recruiting capability, you don't understand what's actually happening, because Oklahoma State could be doing that, but they're not. Mike Gundy likes to approach it from what he's really good at, and that's fine. He's good at finding these 3-stars under the radar, and that's totally cool. Doesn't work in the current NIL era, and that's a part of the issue that we're facing today. But we won't get too deep into all that stuff. But I just wanted to build off what you said.
I dig it. I appreciate it. We are going to shift into some of the positivity for the Cowboys. Maybe there's not an overabundance of things that are very positive, but we've got some dudes that are making some moves and doing some things to potentially get themselves in an NFL or professional setting. Speaking of professional settings, Alan Bowman kicked off his LinkedIn career, and we're going to maybe help him out here. LinkedIn jobs, whenever you're trying to hire for your small business and you want to find quality professionals that are filling the right void for you, LinkedIn is the best in the business. LinkedIn is not just your typical run-of-the-mill job board. They're going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading sites because they know better. 86% of small businesses do, in fact, get a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. Make sure that you are hiring professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. You need to post your job for free today alongside the other 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn for hiring. Make sure that you go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, all one word. Again, that is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job there for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Make sure that you get the best in the land today. All right, minor technical difficulty. It's okay. We'll roll this thing right in here. Reagan, whenever you look at some of the Cowboys this season, again, it hasn't always been super pretty, but you do have both Trey Rucker and Nick Martin, 1 and 2 in the conference in tackles. So there's some highlights there. We are one of the best in the country in punting. We have 2 guys in the top 10 in the Big 12 when it comes to punting. And then offensively, right, from a yards perspective, Bowman was putting up some yards there for a little bit. But, we all know what Brennan Presley can do. I think a lot of us have been very excited to see what Talon Shetron has been able to provide lately. As you go through the midseason, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities to have disagreement, but I will tell you my offensive MVP, and you tell me whether I'm crazy or not. For offensive MVP, it's got to be Dejon Stribling, right?
I think that's a very good shout. I think if I were to pick off the top of my head, I'd probably go Stribling. I think if Oklahoma State was better, he'd be in a Biletnikoff race, honestly.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're not competitive, so he won't be in that award. But I think he's definitely that's a really good shout.
Well, and you know what? If you wanted to say that Brennan Presley should be up here as well, I don't think that you'd get a massive argument from a whole lot of people, because Brennan Presley, I guess he's kind of that security blanket, since we refuse to or don't know how to use tight ends as a security blanket in our offense. Instead, our security blanket ends up being Brennan Presley. So, yeah, I think if you wanted to throw him into this conversation of potentially being the guy, he's just outside the top 15 in the Big 12 and receiving yards and everything as well. So he might be a good honorable mention candidate. All right, so defensively, though, there's a few guys that have been able to do some things this season that have caught our eye. Obviously, you have Trey and Nick, both 1 and 2 in the Big 12 in tackles. You could go back and forth here. I am personally going to go with Trey Rucker because just the story that he has had to, adversity, go through all that fun stuff. And last year he got absolutely murdered in pass coverage. So a lot of people didn't even want him playing this year because you saw number 9 getting cooked all year last year. So the fact that, he's dealt with adversity before he ever even got here, dealt with adversity when he got here. And it's been this mix and match, right? We remember him a few years ago. He was the guy like Calvin Bundage that would come flying out of nowhere. He may hit somebody in the ear hole and get a 15-yarder, but he has evolved from the gamble guy, right? That'll just fly over everybody and do whatever, to getting burnt all year last year in pass coverage. But this year, he's an animal, man. Like Nick Martin and Trey Rucker are the defense, pretty much. And other teams know that. Dude, whenever you look at other teams like tackles, it's usually pretty close. Ours is not. Like you have Nick and Trey, and then everybody else is like double digits behind them in tackles. It's absolutely crazy that we have 2 dudes that eat up like 80% of all of the tackles. It's insanity. So I'm going Trey. Would you agree? Or would you go Nick? Would you kind of switch it up? What do you think?
It's got to be Nick Martin because we saw what happened when he wasn't on the field against West Virginia. And I think that if you took Rucker off, I think Oklahoma State wouldn't fundamentally change all that much. And that's no disrespect to Trey Rucker because I think he's having to fulfill an impossible role because Kendall Daniels hasn't been what he should be. And so I think you're seeing Trey Rucker have to step in the gap of a linebacker pretty much every other play and then also try and read the safety or the secondary roles. And so you're seeing a couple plays where he's just kind of standing there and the ball gets passed. It's like, well, you don't get it. It's because Daniels off tackling a guy that doesn't have the football. So, and that's no disrespect to Kendall Daniels. I don't mean any disrespect to him. I think that he's been coached wrong. I think he's been put in the wrong spots. And there's sometimes guys just don't find the right spot on the field, and that's their career. They just can't find where they belong. And I think Daniels is like that because he's not fully a linebacker, but he's also doesn't really work as a safety, and he's too big to be one anyway. And then he can't be a corner. So where do you put him? He's a weird hybrid, and I just don't think he fits in Nardo's system. I think it's as simple as that. I think he'd fit a lot better in a Jim Knowles system. Because he'd work much better off the edge, I actually think, but not in this case. And I like Rucker
part of
as
that
well,
is
but
just
I also mentioned, it's responsibility.
Like whenever you're young and you're like calling all over freshman year, you don't have a responsibility of dictating communication and moving guys over. You're like when you're young and you're that talented, your job is to say, hey, just go get the quarterback. Right? We're only going to put you in on 3rd and long, and you just pin your ears back and have some fun. But and we saw that freshman year out of Kendall Daniels. We saw that, out of Colin Oliver. Colin Oliver was able to grow in his multi-role. But you're right. Kendall Daniels, since that freshman, just pin your ears back and go make crazy plays. It does seem like that he's kind of regressed a little bit from a cerebral IQ side of the game.
Absolutely. I think, by the way, you're talking about the tackles. I know this is random, but I looked it up just out of curiosity. Do you know 3rd place is our 3rd string linebacker, Jeff Roberson?
And what's the differentiation between Jeff and
17 tackles? So the next starter on the list is Kendall Daniels at 29, nearly 20 tackles less than Nick Martin, who's at 2nd, and like 30 or 40 from Trey Rucker. That's embarrassing.
Wild, dude. All right. So for special teams, I really did anticipate this being a massive special team season because of Sean Snyder and athletically what we have. But we do have West Falls, number 2 in the Big 12 when it comes to punting. Hudson Clark still in the top 10 as well when it comes to punting. They both do different things. Hudson's put 5 inside the 20 this year. Hudson's only done that a few times, but Hudson has a 73-yarder. And a lot of, so you have the big leg in Wes, and you have the athletic dude and Hudson. Hudson, I thought was going to kind of shock the world this year athletically, but we haven't seen it. So I've got to go with Wes Paul. Like the big leg dude, he has a job to do, but he's actually like an expert at that job. You need a 73-yarder? All right, coach, hold my beer. I got you covered.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with him. And also Kansas State fans, you were wrong about this guy, man. He's a good special teams coach. He's done a done a great job, especially with kind of a funky year for Oklahoma State in terms of like kicker and whatnot. We don't really have a ton of, I would say, raw talent there, and I think he's done a good job putting the pieces together.
I agree, but man, I just with the athleticism that Hudson has, I assumed that we were going to get some wrinkles this year, some fakes, right? Some fake punts with a couple passes.
That
And we
ain't
just,
that ain't Snyder's job, brother. That's Gundy not wanting to do that type of stuff, though. That would be my argument. Gundy's too conservative for the fakes. We've known that for years now.
which is absolutely wild, man, because the days of him and Les Miles together, you didn't know what was going to happen. You had no clue.
Well, you look at Quinn Sharp, who's actually crazy athletic, and they never really utilized him that way. So it's nothing new, but
talk about a wasted pro career. I thought Quinn was going to do very well.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I know he runs like he does like a kicking academy thing too, though.
Nice.
Super cool guy. I actually met his parents. That was a fun experience. But anyway.
All right. So those are the midseason MVPs for me. Now, if we do midseason coaching MVPs, Joe Bob. It's got to be Joe Bob, right?
Joe Bob, yeah, it has to be.
If we've got two linebackers and Trey Rucker, which is pretty much turned into a linebacker, and those are the guys that are leading the charge, you got to give Dan Hammerschmidt a shout out because the safeties have been doing a lot this year. You know, I don't know if I believe in all of the depth that we have at DB, but maybe Duffy. I don't know. There's some potential names in there, but to me, it's got to be Joe Bob. Because linebacker's been steady. Even when we lose dudes, linebacker has still found a way to be pretty consistent.
It's pretty much the only choice for me. I'm looking down the list trying to see if there's anything else I would select, and I
would go Joe Bob or Hammerschmidt.
Yeah, there's really no one else.
Right? Yeah.
No disrespect whatsoever, right. But I don't. It's almost disappointing.
I thought we'd get to this point in the season, and I'd be praising Sean Snyder and all the craziness, but we're just, we're very vanilla. Which says when you're down by 20, why are we still doing? No. Oh, we're gonna get me ranting now. We don't want that. All right. So we are gonna shift gears. Before we shift gears, is there any other MVPs or anything you wanted to highlight before we move on?
Were we just doing defense, or was that just
anybody anywhere individualistically? I mean, for a freshman MVP, I would say it's got to be Josh Ford, but David Kabongo had a nice day.
I feel like really under the radar guy. He was always under the radar, but J.W. Walsh always deserves a little bit of a shout, just as like he does a lot for keeping things together that shouldn't be together.
And he gets us in a lot of doors in the DFW area.
Correct. J.W. Walsh, if you ever wanted to look at a potential guy that could recruit at a very, very high level for Oklahoma State down the line, he's definitely one of those guys for sure. So, yeah, I like J.W. Walsh.
I like it. Well, just like I also like the potential to get tickets to the Cowboys game in Provo, Utah. Reagan, I don't know if you're coming, but if you are, maybe you should get squared away today with Game Time tickets. We'll see if this little fun thing works this time or not. Ta-da! No. Oh, there it goes. Game Time tickets is the best thing for you because, again, the travel, the hotels, the fees, that's all stressful in and of itself. Make sure that when you get tickets, that part of the equation is not stressful. Right now, Game Time has a feature called the Game Time Picks that takes all the craziness out of you searching for thousands of hours, for thousands of things to find one ticket. Game Time Picks filters out all of that fluffy stuff for you to get right to the best as quick as possible. With the all-in pricing, it allows you to know the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The panoramic view from the seat is the best in the game, and you also know exactly where you're at, and there's no craziness of getting put in the wrong section. The Game Time ticket coverage means that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Make sure you create that account, redeem that code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today because you already know what time it is. It is game time. Well, I like that my little ad thing is working now. Okay, so that must mean we're back on track. Whenever you're looking at this game, right, and some of the things that we're doing, I think there is a decent amount of excitement for Garrett Rangel. Do you think that we're going to be able to do enough, Reagan, to go into Provo and get this W?
There's zero indication to tell me yes. None.
Now hold on.
Now hold on before I finish.
Okay.
But hmm, I maybe the thing it's a short week for BYU. They're coming off of a very difficult stretch of schedule. Oklahoma State got the bye. There were things that were fixed. Okay, not a lot, but there were things that were fixed. You've got a new quarterback coming in that I think the whole team's pretty excited to work around. You don't have to have a crazy offensive game to beat BYU, but you need your defense to be on point, which I think is the question: is will we be able to stop the run? And is Nick Martin going to be healthy by then? And I think there's a few questions there, but yeah, I think it's possible just because Oklahoma State can match BYU talent to talent. But I think it's all going to come down to, did we make certain changes in coverage schemes, and how much do we actually run Ollie Gordon? Because I don't know the answer to that question. So
That's a good question to ask, right? I mean, he was clearly
yeah.
banged up a little bit at the end of the last game, and
Does
I
Ollie
do know
want to
that.
be ran? That's the other thing too, you know.
But Garrett's his boy, right? So Ollie's been waiting on this moment all year too. I think if I don't know. I think if we're gonna see a moment where Ollie does potentially pop off, it could be in this game, even with him not being 100%. With that being said, I would like to see some more Trent Allen, so we know what we're gonna have rolling in the next year with AJ Green and of course Sesi Vaialahi. I don't know that it'd be crazy, at some point in time to see a little bit of Rodney Fields action, but I will tell you the reason that I think that I'm starting to feel more confident is because of the help that, and I'm not going to slip up, right, like I did on the Dickey thing. So I'm going to keep my mouth kind of shut. But you're very well aware as well about some of the help that we're getting defensively right now. And if that's something that Nardo can implement and we can schematically find a way to isolate some of BYU's top guys, this could be a learning moment for not only Brian Nardo, but of course Mike Gundy, because Mike Gundy's going to be able to see how can Brian Nardo take some things and choreograph it in a different way with a little bit of a different meaning and make it make sense on the field without leaving massive gaps. So because of that, and because I am a big believer in Nardo eventually figuring this thing out, I got to believe that the defense is going to find ways to make it very difficult on BYU. So I'm excited about Garrett Rangel. I think we're going to see a little bit more of an inspired version of a Cowboy offense. Is it going to be enough of an inspiration to get the W? I mean, right now I wouldn't say yes.
Well,
right?
the thing I will interrupt you on just real quick is the offensive line is going to look better for certain reasons, in my opinion. From my understanding, okay, the run schemes are going to be better this week against BYU. And that's really important. You talked about Ollie potentially going off. If Ollie's going to play at full, if he's going to play at the full snap, then I think that there's a chance that he has a really good game. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I just, I have a hard time believing that we can get the interior figured out with Cole Birmingham in there. I'm sorry, but we have a lot of evidence this year. I've been really hard on Preston Wilson too, but the more I look back, he hasn't been good, right? But he's been better than I've given him credit for. But if you go back and look at all the games, Cole Birmingham is the problem, but we just keep starting him. I don't get it. I do get it. It's because he's a senior and he's a redshirt senior. And, oh, dude, does that ever never mind. I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole. Oh, look at me becoming more reserved.
There you go.
Hey,
I know what you're saying, but I'm gonna be real. I don't think the offensive line specific players have a whole lot to do with the struggles. I think Birmingham has been, not the best, to say respectfully. But whenever you're crashing to the left side and a QB draw where Alan Bowman runs the opposite direction of the side the offensive line is, that's probably a schematic issue. Or when you run up the middle and they crash to the left, or whatever. I don't even understand it. Trying to trick the defense to shift a different. It doesn't make any sense.
No, you're
especially because the problem is too is it's not like then we run anyway. All right,
So,
moving on.
Before we get down, that's all we got for this one. But off of that, I do want to say, so my 9-year-old was watching a very small portion of the game with me the other day, and sarcastically, it was like 3rd and 7, and I was like, "Watch, we're gonna run it up the middle," and then we did just that, and I was like, "Dag nabbit!" And my daughter goes, "He's like, Dad, how'd you know that?" And I said, "Because Casey Dunn. That's how I knew it. That's how they knew it. That's how you knew it."
Dude.
And my 9-year-old goes, "Well, if everybody knows it, why do we keep doing it?" And I was like, "I'm going to bring you, Kenna, you're going to be my next guest because I don't understand it either."
Send your kid to the press conference. You'll ask a harder question than Robert Allen. Respectfully. No, genuine. So I was during the West Virginia game, I was on a call with my buddy Logan. I do a podcast with, by the way. So
okay.
But we were on the game. I said, "Watch, I'm gonna call the next 5 plays exactly what they are before the ball is snapped," and I got 4 out of 5, and that's embarrassing because I'm not a coach. It is just so obvious.
You're telling me you don't make over $1 million?
No, well, I could do a better job making that wage. I'm just going to be completely honest with you, but here's me, I guess. Yeah, dude, see me. Oh gosh, this is another. We're going story mode here, but this one's funny. I'm not going to say his name just because he's a little bit more on the professional level, but someone I like to do broadcasts with. We were driving to one of our locations, and we were talking about Casey Dunn. He said, I can make $0 and still probably put in more time than Casey Dunn probably does on the play calling.
Yep.
And this guy does 0 coaching experiences, but he's a practical guy, and it's just, man.
Dude,
so
I'm dumber than 13 boxes of rocks put together, but
seriously.
I'm pretty sure I know not to run it up the gut all the time in a 7-man box.
All you have to do, Cody, is look at our line, the way we align on the offensive line when we set up, where Ollie Gordon motions to, or whatever running back we're starting, and pre-snap shift, and what down it is. And if you watch Oklahoma State football enough and you did enough film study, you would know exactly what the play type will be: a run, a pass, play action, every single time, because there is no variability in the offense.
Well, you know what's even worse to me is when the defense is yelling
what you're gonna do.
He's coming on a cross, and we don't call an audible. Like when the defense is screaming what the play is, why don't we change the play?
It's so crazy too, because you remember Mason Rudolph days. He's audibling the whole
all the time
pre-snap, and it's why our offense was so dominant, because we had the best pre-snap calls in college football. Anyway, I'm gonna.
There we go. Hey, let's see if Mason. Well, we know Bowman can get an 8th year for real. Not joking. He actually can get an 8th year. So let's see if we can trade Bowman's 8th year for Mason. We'll get Mason a 5th year. There it is. There's the fix.
You're joking, right?
Were you about to say that you want? No, I'm not joking. He actually can. Bowman can get an 8th year.
Please. I love you, Alan, but please go be an accountant, bro. Please. I can't.
You heard it here first. Reagan wants Bowman back. And
I love Alan Bowman. As a person, by the way, Alan Bowman's actually like a top-class person, by the way. Yes. I've had 0 bad in it. Yes. No one's had bad interactions with Alan Bowman. He's cool. Yeah. I think he's coming to the point where he kind of accepts what's next for him anyway. So
I agree.
No disrespect whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, any bahoo, brother man, I greatly appreciate you coming on here. I cracked my tooth Friday, and I was like, I need a guest to help me kind of coast through this thing. So I greatly appreciate you.
Yes,
and
sir.
You mentioned some other stuff you're doing. Let the fine folks out here know how they can track you down and how they can throw stuff at you when they do see you. That's not you. That's me. There's you.
Thanks, Cody. Just three things. One, obviously my Twitter, OK State Mart. That's where I really focus on Oklahoma State content exclusively. Then KRefSports.tv. You can always catch me on UConn broadcasts for color and play-by-play commentary. And the big thing is my podcast. I do one like Cody, not quite like this. Cody's got it all figured out. But the Mart Cast, you can check that out on all platforms, including YouTube. So you can listen to my rant on Casey Dunn there if you want to, where I kind of go a lot more in depth than I did here, but there you go.
I greatly appreciate your time, brother, man.
Yes,
Everybody,
sir.
make sure you go check out Reagan. And you know what? We'll see what your week's like. We might throw you back on here and we'll do like a Friday prediction style of thing. And we'll see if something in this week gives us a little bit more excitement for this game in Provo.
42-0, or we're winning. No in between, unfortunately. I'm just
okay. Well, there you go. Reagan's breaking it down today. All right, my dude. You know I love you. I appreciate you. All of you fine folks out here. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you as well. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. That's okay too. And more importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, all of the funny stuff. Hit the stars, leave a review, do what you do. You know the drill. Later, my taters.